The following episode contains sensitive topic information that may not be appropriate for young listeners, as well as religious or other views that may not reflect those of the Sirens team.
Good evening, listeners. Welcome to Sirens of the Supernatural. We are here with you on Black Friday with some spooky stories. So, we hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and got plenty to eat and had some time with your friends and family. Now, sit back and relax because our first story is coming to you from the book Eerie, Appalachia, and it's written by Mark Muncy and Kari Schultz. And this is a book that is full of these great stories. So we want to give them a shout out and promote the book if you're looking for some scary stories. Here is one. It's called Screaming Jenny from Moulton, Alabama. This story comes to us. Louisa Elizabeth Jane Bates was born January 22nd, 1826, in the hills of Kentucky. At the age of 14, she married Willis Brooks Jr., a man some 20 years her senior. He was a saddle maker and leather worker. Jane was a beauty to behold, according to all who knew her. She was half Cherokee and had deep blue eyes. The couple were reportedly very happy together. The Brooks family had many children and eventually moved to Alabama. There they operated a popular inn at a crossroads of several main routes through the state at the foothills of the southwestern tip of the Appalachian Mountains. The inn was right on the main thruway to the Mississippi River ports. They were doing quite well for themselves. Then the Civil War broke out. Alabama in their area had little love for the war. They felt that it was a rich man's war. After the initial rush of recruitment in the early days of the war, the Confederacy started having issues meeting the need for soldiers. So it created a draft. The draft caused further resentment, as the rich could pay others to fight in their stead or were granted exemptions if they owned more than 20 slaves. It was widely believed that Willis Brooks was acting as a spy at his inn for the Union in the North. At the very least, he publicly advocated for neutrality. Word got out to a band of the Confederate Home Guard about his sympathies. The Home Guard were primarily enforcers of the draft, but they also acted as tax collectors. They came to the inn of the Brooks family sometime in late 1863. They forced Willis Brooks out of his inn and prepared to lynch him on a nearby tree. They brought out his wife Jane and all their children to watch the act. The eldest son of the family grabbed a gun from the house, intent on saving his father. Instead, he was gunned down before he could fire. The guardsmen then hanged Willis Brooks. When he did not die quickly enough for their taste, they shot him as well. They then left the grieving family and went away. Jane grabbed all of her children and brought them to the bodies of her husband and her eldest son. She made the rest of the children put their hands on the blood of their fallen kin. She then made them swear a Cherokee blood oath not to rest until every member of that gang of Confederate Guard had been slain in the name of vengeance. Jane took the name Aunt Jenny. She was a young widow with a baby and several young children to care for. She kept to the inn but also taught the children how to fight. She would say in later years that she wasted many a keg of powder teaching my boys to shoot. The 8 men were hunted over the years after, and 5 of them were killed by her children. 2 more were slain by Jenny herself. The men were found in various locations from Texas all the way back to Kentucky. It took many years, and many of the sons of the Willis family died in the attempts to hunt their father's murderers. In the years that followed, Aunt Jenny would marry again. She also bore a few more children. Her previous children had become legends in their own right and fought with various gangs. Famously, There was a rivalry with the Hubbard family that rivaled the Hatfield-McCoy feud in body count alone. When one of her sons was killed in a gunfight where he was ambushed by 20 men, she was pleased to hear he had taken 6 of them with him. Her last son, Henry, had died. Jenny was famously quoted as saying, "All of my sons died like men. They all had their boots on." About all the feuds and gang fights over the years involving her family, she said, "After that terrible night, we were never going to let anyone get the better of us again." The family never found the last of the Confederate Guard. Jenny lived to be 98 years old. As she lay on her deathbed, she asked her priest to bring a soap dish to her that she had made herself many years ago. She wanted to wash away the blood and the sin on her hands. He brought it to her. She washed her hands and then passed away. As the priest went to put the dish away, he noticed it was of an odd shape. After closer examination, he realized what it was. Jenny had made the dish from the skull of the first man they had killed in retribution for the death of her first husband. Jenny apparently still haunts the Appalachian foothills of Alabama. Her ghost is seen still hunting the last of the guard who escaped her. She shouts an unearthly scream at witnesses. She is known as Screaming Jenny in the hills. Everyone says that she is a spirit of red, glowing shadow, except for her piercing blue eyes. So that's our story. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
She's
Screaming Jenny. Yes, a ghost of revenge.
I love it. I love to hear it. I love that for her.
And our next story comes from the book No Place for Happiness, Scary Short Stories, written by author Erika Lance. And this is another great book if you're looking for some spooky stories before bedtime or just any time. And this one's called Sentry's Choice. Coffee. That was his first thought and then his second. It was the only thought as his feet hit the floor to get out of bed. The internal debate on whether to shower lasted 3 seconds because his stomach growled. He needed food as well. Still wearing the jeans from the night before, he felt no need to change. He was not intending to impress anyone at the corner coffee shop. He pulled a sweatshirt over his head as he trudged to the fridge to grab anything to stuff in his face and wondered what the day would hold. It only took a moment of looking in his fridge to see that he was not a shopper. He grabbed his keys and wallet and headed toward the door. He needed his coffee. Benny's Beantown was just around the corner. As he entered the brisk morning air, he thought about his meeting with her. It was scheduled for that day at 3 p.m. As he stood in line behind a particularly anal person ordering the most complex version of tea he had ever heard, he wondered if he would be missed. He finally got through the line and ordered coffee and a breakfast sandwich. At a small table near the front window of the shop, he took his first sips of the coffee and felt it warm his insides. His mind wandered to the events of the last 2 days. His friend Colin had recommended they go to meet some babes on a break from their midterm project. He was not going to argue and escape from the lab, where he spent the better part of every day. As he sat down at the bar to order a beer and watched Colin make his move toward some of the aforementioned babes, he felt a chill run up his spine as someone took a seat next to him. "You're Jimmy," he heard his new companion say. He wasn't sure, but he thought it should have been a question. He turned to face her and was stunned. She was breathtaking. She had light blonde hair one could almost call silver, and eyes that were a deep royal blue. She had pale skin and was wearing a black sweater and jeans. Her eyes never left his. "You're Jimmy," she said again as he watched her plump rosy lips move. It was only when she blinked he was able to realize he hadn't responded. He looked back toward the beers that were now before him. Yes, I'm Jimmy, he finally replied as he tried to regain his composure. Can I buy you a drink? He asked as he turned to look at her again. She smiled and shook her head. As he studied her more, he realized that she was deliberate in her movement. Otherwise, she was very still in posture and expression. Jimmy, how is your project coming along? She asked. It's good, he said automatically and took another drink. Wait, are you in my chem lab? He asked, already knowing the answer. She wasn't. He knew he had never seen her before. Jimmy, you should stop the project, she said, righting her head to look at him dead on. He felt the same chill again. This is really weird, he thought as he tore his gaze from the stranger to spot Colin across the room. He wanted his friend to look up and see her. Colin was chatting and laughing with two girls at a high-top table on the other side of the bar, and he didn't look up at all. Jimmy sighed and turned back to find the girl was gone. He scanned the bar but didn't see any sign of her. He needed sleep, he decided, and took another swallow of his beer. He had left Colin at the bar that night. When he met up with him in the lab the next day, Jimmy debated telling his friend about the encounter, but couldn't bring himself to explain it out loud. By the end of the day, he had convinced himself that he had imagined all of it, and that he would need to make sure he didn't get that sleep-deprived again. Listening to one of his favorite playlists on his iPod as he walked home, the night air was cold against his exposed skin. He looked up to see the moon full in the sky. The walk was peaceful and he began to relax. As he rounded the corner, he saw her waiting outside the door leading up to his apartment. She was just as breathtaking as the night before. There was something different, however, and he could feel it in the air around her. He felt heavier, as if he had been suddenly burdened with a terrible weight. She gestured for him to lead the way upstairs. He opened the door, allowing her to enter, and followed, closing the door behind them. He closed his eyes, his hand still on the door handle. He was obviously going crazy. He took in a deep breath and hoped, when he turned, she would be gone. As he began to turn, letting go of the knob, she spoke. Jimmy, you're not crazy. Then what am I? He asked, meeting her gaze. She looked down for a moment, then back at him. You're Jimmy. She walked over to a window that faced the street and wrapped her arms across her chest as if she was getting a chill. What would you do if you were sitting in a bar and you knew the person sitting next to you would be responsible for the deaths of millions of people? She asked. She did not remove her gaze from the window. I don't know. How would I know that? Is it Hitler or something? He replied and ran his fingers through his hair. What if it was? What if it was Hitler? Could you kill him? She asked, this time turning to meet his gaze. I don't know, he said, looking down. Oh, why are you asking me this? She moved and sat on the coffee table in front of him. She seemed to take a minute to gather her thoughts. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I should not have asked you that, she finally said, in a whisper. It's okay. I mean, I would hope I could do something like that. It would be the right thing, he told her. He didn't know why, but he wanted to make her happy. She reached out and took his hands in hers, studying them. You're going to die tomorrow. Her voice betrayed nothing. You're going to die because I am going to kill you, Jimmy. He heard the truth in her words. They were not a threat or a warning. They were not intended to scare him. She was just stating a truth. He felt himself unable to disbelieve her. Instead, he found that his head began to spin, and he was suddenly very nauseous. He closed his eyes and felt the world begin to tumble in around him. He felt his hands in hers again and knew she was the only thing that held him in place. Her words engulfed him. I thought I could stop it. Stop you. I'll stop whatever I need to. I will. I can. Just tell me what to do, he said, pleading but unable to open his eyes. He felt tears flowing down his face. She let go of one hand and cupped his face, wiping his tears. He began to feel a calm seep into him. "There's nothing you can do, Jimmy," she said, her words certain. "But why?" He needed to understand. "Because you will end up killing millions in the future," she answered. "I'm not going to kill anyone," he said. "Yes, you will," she said, and blinked again. "In 8 years' time, you will be a very successful biochemist. You will work for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. You will realize, while working on a vaccine for hepatitis, that the project you started in your junior year of college holds the key to how to halt the infection of cells with the hepatitis virus." "I'll cure hepatitis?" he asked. She continued as if he hadn't spoken. "It will be hailed as a medical miracle, and the test subjects will show immediate improvement. The corporation will race to patent it, and the promotion will begin." "But he started. "Millions will get the new required vaccine. Thousands will proclaim how it saved them. Then an 8-year-old girl in Ripon, Wisconsin, will develop symptoms that first appear to be a common cold. Her brain will swell with what the doctors believe is fever. 2 days will pass, and she will begin to hemorrhage internally. As they race to save her, the surgical team will unknowingly expose themselves to a mutated strain of the vaccine. They will carry it with them all over town for days before they begin to show symptoms. This is the beginning. Because your vaccine halts the infection of cells, it will also halt the cell's ability to fight. Millions will die," she finished, and looked away for a moment, and then back again to meet his gaze. Jimmy realized he was staring. He closed his eyes again and listened to the sound of his own breath. He felt her hands holding him. Taking a deep breath, he asked, "Who are you?" "I am a sentry," she replied, the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. A what?" he asked, confused. "I am a guard. I am a watcher. I do not let things come to pass," she replied, as if reading from text she had recited 100 times before. He was deciding what to ask next when she leaned close and took his face in both her hands. She pressed her lips against his. It was as if he were freezing and on fire at the same time. It was the most intense experience of his life. As she pulled her lips from his, he opened his eyes to see hers sparkling as if there were stars embedded deep inside them. "I will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. You should sleep," she said, as she leaned in and kissed his forehead. He felt her lips long after she left. His gaze returned to the mug of coffee in front of him, and he realized that it was empty. He looked around the coffee shop at everyone going about their business, some enjoying their time, some rushing around, and it occurred to him that he hadn't even thought about what he should do before that afternoon. Should I tell my family? Should I say goodbye to my friends? As thoughts began to race through his mind, it took only a moment for the calm to settle in, and he realized the only thing he needed to do. It was 2:58 p.m. when he arrived on the bridge. She had never said to meet her there. It was simply where he found his feet leading him. She turned and extended her hand. He walked up and placed the notebook he had been carrying in her palm. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, she kissed him again. The same extreme sensation struck him, and he held on to it as long as he could. His lips left hers, and he stared again into the starry skies of her eyes. "Thank you, Jimmy," she whispered, smiling for the first time. Then he was falling. The end.
Dang.
That's a great story, and there's many more in this book. No Place
That
for
was so
Happy.
good. Holy cow.
This story is called Many Thanks, and it's written by Wolf Magic on Creepypasta. My family had a tradition that we would all exchange one gift on Thanksgiving Day to bring good fortune for the coming holiday season. We never gave anything fancy, just candy, CDs, socks, or maybe a book. The week before Thanksgiving, we would all gather around and our names would go into a hat. Like Secret Santa, but we didn't hide it from each other. We would all reach in and pick a name. For a little more context, I'm the middle child, a boy sandwiched between older and younger sisters. Plus, our only remaining grandmother had just moved in with us, so all 6 of our names go into the hat, and fate decides the rest. So here's how it all went down. My youngest sister Ricky went first, and she got Mom. Mom picks next and gets Grandma. Grandma then picks my name. Great, I say to myself, another pair of socks. My turn to pick, and I get my older sister Claire. She then picks Dad, which means Dad gets my youngest sister. After our big ceremony, I was excited to start thinking about what to get for Claire. I wanted it to not only be awesome, but beyond awesome. You see, whenever my sister would get me a gift, it was always some amazing, thoughtful CD from a band I'd never heard of, or a book of short stories that would somehow always relate perfectly to my life. I felt like I could never give her something as thoughtful, but I was going to try. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what to get. The problem is, it seemed like she had everything. How am I going to find something that she likes? She's the deep-thinking, artistic type, so what, like a candle? I was getting frustrated. I kept thinking, I could get her a cool new book, but with the amount she reads, how would I find something she hasn't read already? And then it hit me. There's an old antique bookstore in town that I've always wanted to visit, but never have. I thought they must have some old, weird, obscure something that she would like, right? 2 days before Thanksgiving, I decided to go down to the bookstore. I've never gone here before because this place has always given me the creeps. I don't know what it is about it. There's nothing traditionally creepy. It's packed into a small strip mall between a check cashing place and an adult novelty store. Maybe I was just nervous someone would see me and think I was going into adult pursuits too instead of the bookstore, but nevertheless, this was the time to go. When I entered the bookstore, I was immediately overcome with the scent of incense and old books. It felt almost welcoming. I wish it didn't. I wish there was something that told me to just turn around and leave. Welcome. An older, delicate voice came from around a stack of books. For some reason, I wasn't expecting this and let out a sort of peep noise. I'm sorry to startle you, child. Are you looking for something? Or do you hope something finds you? What? I thought. Sometimes books just find where they're meant to be. It's almost like she heard me. I'm looking for something for my sister, I replied. Ah, sister, excellent. Wander these aisles, and you will find what you're looking for, my child. My books will let you know which one is the perfect gift. And with that, she sort of just glided toward a back room where I could hear her rustling papers about. Now, I'm in this creepy bookstore with a lady that is loving on her books way too much, and I don't leave. I mean, honestly, why would I? I start to rummage through the stacks of books, the aisles of books, the mounds of books. They were everywhere. How was I going to find anything interesting? Towards the front of the store, all the books seemed to be relatively newer. Nothing I would call antique. So I wondered. I slowly made my way towards the back of the store. The further in I went, the older the books started to get. Not that I knew anything about the titles I saw, but you could tell from the old broken leather of the covers that these books had some mileage on them. All these looked cool, but what did I know about picking out something she would like? I would probably have just as much luck picking at random and finding something that way. Right when I had that thought is when I saw it. A small leather book bound in twine. "Many thanks" was written on the spine. Damn it if that storekeeper wasn't right. It felt like this book found me. I pulled the book from the shelf to finally have a look at its cover. "Many thanks, the personal diary of Harriet Llewellyn." I have no idea who Harriet Llewellyn is or was, but I was intrigued. I began to untie the twine. Ah, an excellent choice. I peeped again. "You scared me," I exclaimed. "So sorry, my child, but it seems as if your book has found you." "What is it?" I asked. "Ah, that is the diary of a young woman that grew up around here. Every year on Thanksgiving, she would write about her year and what she was grateful for." Are you kidding me? This is perfect, I thought. It certainly is the perfect gift. "Excuse me?" I said. "Can I help you find anything else?" "No thanks," I replied, and then I quickly paid for the diary. There was no need to linger around. This was the gift. Like I actually found something cool that Claire would go crazy for. She loves this type of stuff. I couldn't wait to get home to have a peek at the diary myself. When I arrived home, I was ready to run up to my room and get a sneak peek of the diary before I gave it to Claire, but I was met at the door with an angry father informing me that my chores had been neglected. "Get to work on these chores before I get to work on you." Dad was terrible with threats. It was like he lost his nerve halfway through and had no idea how to finish what he started. Regardless, I understood it and got to work. I was so busy, it wasn't until later that night that I finally got to take a glimpse at the diary. I swear it looked like something out of a movie. I was sitting on my bed, covers over my head and flashlight in hand. I untied the twine that bound the diary and opened the cover. November 23rd, 1684. Age 8. Today, Grandmother gave me this book. She says it's called a diary. She said every year on this day I should write in it. She said I need to write what I'm thankful for because the years can be hard. I'm thankful for Mommy and Daddy. I'm thankful for Grandmother. I'm thankful for my brothers Daniel and George, even when they're mean to me. She goes on to talk a lot about the year's harvest and crops and getting ready for winter, so I kind of skimmed through the rest of this entry. Same goes for the following few entries as well. Just lots of thanks and talking about the year's harvest. I guess when you're living in colonial New England, there isn't much else to talk about. I jumped ahead when I saw something interesting. November 24th, 1689. Age 13. This year has been horrible. What am I supposed to be thankful for? Father died while out hunting. My brothers have both become ill and bedridden. I spend all my days taking care of them. Mother and Grandmother stay up late in the kitchen cooking up remedies to help my brothers, but nothing works. And they never let me help them. Mother says I'm too young. Grandmother says I need to wait a few more years. I hate it here. I looked at my watch. It was already 2 a.m. How did it get so late? I didn't think I was reading the diary that long. I figured I could read one more entry before I should finally try to get some sleep. I mean, it was finally getting interesting. November 23rd, 1690, age 14. Daniel has passed, and I feel the priest is here daily for the moment George passes too. Mother and Grandmother say I need to be strong, but it's so hard. They say sacrifices must be made if we're to continue to survive. I pray every night for relief. I pray that things will get better. Still, I am thankful for my mother and grandmother. I am thankful George is still with us. I am thankful I have survived another year. It goes on for a bit, so I decided it was time to sleep. I'll let Claire finish it and tell me about it later. It was finally Thanksgiving morning, and I was so excited to give Claire her gift. Ricky gave her gift to Mom first, a goofy-looking turkey picture made from a handprint. Mom gave Grandma her gift. Grandma got me a shirt that said, "Official Pumpkin Pie Tester." I think I would have preferred the socks, but now it's my turn. I grabbed the diary and handed it to Claire. As she unwrapped the book, my heart was pumping. "Whoa," Claire whispered in amazement. "Do you like it?" I asked. At this point, she had already unbound the twine and started reading the first page. She was transfixed with the diary. "So, do you like it?" I repeated. "This is fascinating. Yes, I love it. Where did you find something like this?" I briefly told her about the bookstore and how I spent hours sifting through the stacks, aisles, mounds of books to find her the right one. Maybe I exaggerated a bit, but she was so focused on the diary, I don't think she noticed. The rest of the gift giving went well, and now was the part of the day where we all just kind of waited around till the food was ready. Ricky was off playing with some new toys she got. Mom, Dad, and Grandma were in the kitchen getting our annual feast prepared, and Claire sat in the living room reading the diary. Every now and then she would say something like, "This girl is so young, and she's worried she isn't helping enough. It's so sad." And then she would just get back to reading. After what felt like years, it was time to eat. We all sat around the dining room table, feast ready for consumption, when Claire spoke up. "Before we eat, I'd like to read an entry from the diary I got today." She looked at me and smiled. "I think it will put a little perspective on how fortunate we really are." November 27th, 1692, age 16. Another year has passed, and life seems to get ever harder. With just myself, mother, and grandmother, it's difficult to keep up with everything that needs to be done. We all work extra hard, but since there are no men around, the people whisper. Life has become so rotten in the village. We try our best to live a quiet life. It feels as if each year that goes by, I have less to be thankful for. But this year, that isn't the case. I have learned so much. I'm thankful for all the sacrifices that have been made so that we can remain here. I'm thankful for Mother and Grandmother. They saw that I was ready, and they've opened my eyes to wonderful new possibilities. The year has been tough, but we will persist. Our rituals keep us safe for now. I've seen others become victims of the accusations. I've seen what becomes of them. I keep telling myself our rituals will keep us safe for now. Through all this, I'm thankful for another year. At this point, everyone at the table had naturally lowered their heads and tried to absorb the story. Without looking away from the diary, my sister spoke. "Oh, there seems to be a little more." December 10th, 1692. Tonight's the night. There's no more being quiet. There's no more hiding. There's no more running. They will be coming for us. But I've prepared for this. I've read all of Grandmother's books. On this night, the longest night, my body will burn, so my soul may live. At that very moment, it felt like all the energy was sucked out of the room. Everything went quiet. I looked at Claire. She was still reading from the book, but there was no sound coming from her mouth. I frantically looked between the rest of my family. There was something wrong. They were all just staring at Claire. Not moving, no expression, just staring. I tried to call out to my dad. Nothing came out when I spoke. I tried screaming. Nothing. I hadn't noticed until now, but I looked around the room, and it was gone. Like everything was gone except me and my family sitting at the dining room table in a dark, empty void. The food sat on the table, rotting. I felt sick. I looked back at my family. I tried to scream again. They were still staring at Claire, but they looked like they were rotting too. That's when Claire finally looked up from the diary and straight into my soul. Claire had the most beautiful green eyes you ever saw. The eyes that looked back at me were devoid of all color. Whatever was staring back at me was not Claire. The whole time her lips were moving and no sound was coming out. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I tried to get up and go to my parents, but I couldn't move. I tried to scream again and still nothing. I began to feel empty, hopeless, like there was no point to try to bother anymore. Claire, or whatever it was, started laughing. A low rumble that developed into a high-pitched cackle. For whatever reason, this snapped me out of my slump. I needed to do something. I gathered every ounce of strength, energy, and hope I had left and lifted out of my chair. Everything went dark. The next thing I remember is my entire family standing over me as I laid on the floor of the dining room with a massive headache. "You all right, buddy?" my dad asked. What had just happened? A moment ago, I could swear I was watching my family's bodies being devoured by maggots, but now they look fine. And now they're asking me if I'm okay? I could still feel the emptiness, that hopelessness that consumed me. But it seemed to be slowly fading. My dad helped me off the floor and I got situated back in my seat. Once we were all seated again, Dad made some dumb joke about the situation and everyone started grabbing food. I didn't have much of an appetite anymore. I suddenly thought of Claire. Was she okay? I looked over to her and we made eye contact. I was quickly relieved when I was met with her beautiful green eyes. "Thanks again for the gift," she spoke with a smirk. And at that moment, I saw a flash of darkness behind her stare. Claire never again gave me a thoughtful gift. It's as if she doesn't even know me anymore. She moved away a year later, and we only see her on holidays now. And every time I see her, I swear her eyes are getting darker. Alright guys, so Ryan is going to read you all 2 stories. They are both from Jezebel.com. The first one is called Just Doing Its Job by Jen Yurdy. Just a little trigger warning, talks of suicide in that one. And then the second story is called The Night Terrors by Chaotic Insomniac. They're both very spooky. I hope y'all enjoy.
This was nearly a decade ago. At a very difficult time in my life. I had moved to Northern California from the Pacific Northwest for grad school. Living in a city studio provided by the school with too much stuff in it. No real chance to make friends yet. Unemployed for the first time in my adult life, living off what I could scrounge from odd jobs. I had acute PTSD, and I believed that at the time was going to kill me. I had been suicidal for years before this, and that made it worse. On the afternoon this happened, I was laying in my bed on my side, facing away from the wall with one window above my head. California sunshine sounds of campus outside. I was drifting in and out of a nap when the previously warm and brightly lit room went cool, silent, and dark. It's weird, but maybe a lull in traffic or a cloud over the late afternoon sun. But soon I felt more, then saw a black shadow behind me. Almost as soon as I sensed the being, I don't know what else to call it. I felt it. It felt try to enter me and felt the most pain I've ever experienced. This wasn't sexual at all. Instead, it felt like the black shadows trying to float into my body to possess it, or just satisfy its curiosity. I have no idea. But it hurt so badly. Like every cell in my body was on fire. I didn't dare turn around. I didn't think I could face what I'd see. And I don't know anything else I could do to stop it, because it felt imperative to stop it. My whole body was screaming. I could even feel my face form a scream, but nothing come out. The only thing I could think of to do was just tighten every bone, every muscle, every tendon, every cell in my body, and try to force it out. Or at least stop its process. So that's what I did. And it kind of worked. At least that pushing through feeling stopped for a second. It started up again, and I tightened even further. My body was in so much pain from the intrusion that the tightening was almost a relief. And then it stopped again. I became aware that a sense of a silent, emotional response from the being as I relaxed a bit and it attempted to intrude once more, but more attentively this time. I tightened once again, and I felt this sense of confusion from the being as they withdrew their hand, their body from mine. They were genuinely confused and somewhat concerned about why I was doing this, why I wasn't allowing them in. Something wasn't going according to what they had planned or what they expected. I saw a shadowy part of them pass over me out of the corner of my eye. They seemed to be moving over my body, checking it out. I could feel their presence above my skin and get a sense of the size of them. They were just this cloud, black, darker in some parts, but almost see-through in others. They tried one last time, just a tendril, but I knew what worked at this point and tightened again, and the being withdrew their tendril and disappeared. The room was suddenly light again. I could hear a sound outside just like before, but I still didn't dare move for quite some time after, terrified it would come back. It never did, but I still didn't sleep for weeks. I still struggled to lay down for a nap. What if it comes back? It seemed like most people would think it was sleep paralysis or hypnagogic hallucinations, but I've read about all of these, and it doesn't fit what I felt. I could move enough to tighten. I could feel my face make expressions. I could move my eyes, and I could feel its emotions, which felt very simple with no malice at all. Like it didn't want to hurt me, and it was really puzzled that it realized or suspected it had. It seemed like being expecting me to be asleep, and this is what it really felt like. Dead. I don't know if one of my suicide attempts that year wasn't supposed to have survived, and I got some sort of lust, but got spared somehow. Or maybe someone a few apartments over was within a few minutes late to their final exit because their ride was delayed by me. Or if it was an alien of some kind, it definitely did not feel human in any way. I truly hope I never meet it again until it's my time to go. But I honestly wish it well. It scared the absolute crap out of me, but I really don't think it meant to. Its actions, whatever they were meant to do, felt remarkably simple and neutral. Like it was just doing a job and correcting its mistake when it realized it. Good job. It was just possession. Many years ago, our son went through an extreme night terror phase that gradually morphed, including sleepwalking. He was only 3 at the time and not very articulate yet. He didn't seem to remember the night terrors and wasn't afraid of being alone in his room or even of going to bed on his own. Thither he would go without any prompting, and we'd go check on him and see his little sneakers neatly placed beside his bed, and him curled up under the covers in his PJs. We found that having him sleep in bed with us prevented these episodes altogether. So for weeks, we did just that. It was a bit of a squash, but definitely beat the alternative. But shortly after we resorted to this fix was when the sleepwalking began. One night I felt him clamber over me, and quietly I seemed he had to go to the bathroom, and almost instantly fell back to sleep. I woke his terrified screams, disoriented about where he was. My husband found him shaking uncontrollably next to his bed. Eyes dilated and black with horror, we carried him back to our bed, holding him close, and waited for him to fall back to sleep. This continued back and on for weeks, before my mom brought a lady who was self-proclaimed Kari, or witch doctor, to our home and had her cleansed. She said her house had a lot of negative energy from the previous tenants and restless spirits of small children who had become attached to our son. This was all horrifying to hear. We had experienced odd things, but none more discerning than our son's night terrors. The night terrors stopped after her cleansing. The other activity kicked up, and we wondered and continued to have our son sleep in our room, terrified that he'd have another episode. Some of the other experiences were knots within the wall, doors opening on their own, pictures off the walls, doors slamming shut as you approach them. Though no one was on the other side to have been able to slam them, and we once experienced seeing the shadow of a person, a man, walking around the house, but when we peeked outside, the last straw was when the both of us had the same nightmare. Woke drenched in sweat and seeking comfort from the horrifying dream, only to tell and realize we had been dreaming nearly the same thing. In the dream, we were across the street, talking to our neighbors when they pointed out that our house was on fire. We looked back and saw the house wasn't in black smoke. We could see our son banging his helplessly against the front bay window. In panic, we rushed across the street and into the house so quickly. In my dream, I found him and held him tightly to me as I ran back outside to safety. But only to realize the bundle I held in my arms was his baby blanket, not him. I stared back at the house in time to see it collapse in a fury of flames and woke up screaming. My husband dreamed he went to the house, could hear my son crying out for him and couldn't find him. Then he heard a soft, "Daddy?" and reached down and grabbed him up and ran outside. As he ran, he realized our son felt very light in his arms, and when he looked down, he saw he was only holding a teddy bear. Needless to say, this rattled us even more. We promptly moved out, staying in my parents' guest room until we could sell the house. It wasn't on the market long, and wanting to be upfront about our experiences, we told the buyer against our realtor's advice. And he was a much older man who planned to use it as a rental property. And he waved off our experiences as nervous nonsense.